So we've got a microphone here for questions. So if you got a question, just raise your hand. Introduce yourself. Let us know who you are, and then we'll go from there. So we'll go Troy here first, since I'm closer.
Hey, Boris. Thanks. My name is Troy Miller, and you say you could get a quote from any manufacturer in the world. So what's going to entice manufacturers to participate with you? Because obviously you're going to deal with a huge variety of types of manufacturers out of the mom-and-pop shops versus the larger ones. I would think that your core group's going to be the smaller folks who want to kind of get in wherever they can and might. Anyway, tell me a little bit more about who you really think is going to use this. Who are manufacturers?
Sure. So we're focusing on small and medium-sized manufacturing operations that are doing contract manufacturing. It's a very good question. Why would they want to participate? Right now, a big part of the cost of operation for manufacturers is transaction costs. And that's broken down into two things. First of all, quoting. It costs them a lot of money in engineer time to quote. Second of all, re-engineering an order. So right now, that is what's keeping them from profitably taking these low volume orders. And by automating quoting and by taking engineering out of the equation and doing third-party engineering, where we have a directory of engineers, and unless a customer can provide a design in a specific file format with specs, which we automatically scan for, if they cannot do that, we refer them to these engineers, and we say, these guys are consulting engineers, here's their user ratings, here's how much they cost, come back to us when you're ready with the part. We take all those transaction costs off the table for machine shops. Does that answer your question, sir? Okay.
Hi, I'm Mary Seagraff with Core. Are you familiar with a company in Coralville called Integrated DNA? Because they did a very similar thing with the DNA marketplace. People who were doing research, creating their own DNA was very expensive, the equipment was expensive, and they basically took it onto themselves to develop it for research facilities, hospitals, things like that. It seems fairly similar to what you're trying to do, and they may be someone good to connect with, just from a conversational standpoint, how they managed all that.
You mean that the user inputs the DNA strand sequence into their site and they do replication and send it to?
They've become a manufacturer, basically a manufacturer of DNA, because universities and clinics and stuff like that were trying to make their own DNA. They had the equipment, but it broke down, it wasn't usable, and it was very costly and time consuming. And they then proceeded to do that, and now most people buy their DNA from this company in Coralville. And they started out as a mom and pop themselves and have grown to quite a large organization. Very similar kind of.
Sure, that's very interesting. There's service bureaus for rapid prototyping that are out there. I think our difference in our business model is that we don't have any of our own equipment. We're just making the connection. We thought about what if we buy the equipment ourselves and start running it, and we realized that we'd be entering into a very crowded and competitive market. And so what we would rather do is make that market more efficient and more profitable for all parties involved. But yeah, of course, if you have a connection to them, I would love to talk to them about their experience. It's a very interesting field.
Hi, Boris. Great job. Kim Harris. I'm just curious, will you be screening the manufacturers so there's some kind of assurance of the people that are manufacturing?
So that is one thing that we looked at, is having them make some sort of test piece, then making sure that it is up to our spec. That is a possibility, but I believe really that in a transparent marketplace, people invest a lot in their reputation. Having that rating system really filters out people that are doing a subpar job. Because having somebody make a test piece, all it tells us is that for that piece they made it to spec. It doesn't say that their customer service in the future will be great, that they'll be on time and so forth. I didn't really get into the pain that the customers feel right now, but those are the big things. Not so much that people cannot make their stuff on spec, but that they don't do it on time, their customer service is terrible, that you get treated poorly for your money. So in short, yes, I think that's a possibility, but most of our quality control will come from the market mechanism.
Boris, I got a quick question.
Yes, sir.
How far along are you in the process? Like, what do you have up to this point?
So what you have there, what you saw in the video is our minimum viable product, essentially. We will be taking that online very shortly once we've troubleshot a few minor bugs. The next big step, of course, is to develop some stuff for machine shops and engineers to register, but that's pretty straightforward. And the next big leap is to actually commercialize that algorithm from Technion. That's our big step forward. So that we can, automatically generate prices per order per machine shop.
I know there's some other questions out there. Don't be shy.
Come on, guys. I mean, I know it's wonderful, but it's not completely perfect yet.
So let me interject here. So the purpose of this, obviously, they want to get some feedback on their product. So if you've got questions, by all means, shoot them at them. It may open up some doors that they may not have thought about. So the purpose of this is to ask questions and get some more feedback. So David, maybe you got some insight on some things that you might be able to ask, generate some stuff.
So you showed us your minimum viable product. What's the easiest way? Like, who should we help you get that in front of people? Is that live? Is it just swarmbuild.com? Talk to us about that.
Sure. It's swarmbuild.com. It's not completely live, but it will be, I think, within the next several days, where you will be able to pay. What you saw there is the PayPal sandbox, which lets us play with it. I think the best thing that could happen right now is for us to start getting early customers, startups and individual innovators that are interested in prototyping stuff. We have a base of manufacturers here in Iowa and also in Israel, and in the Pacific Northwest, and even a couple, I think, in Canada. So we can start filling orders right now, and it doesn't have to be anything highly technical. It can be something as simple as laser cut business cards or any sort of nifty idea that you can design in CAD. Yes?
Just a clarification. You said they may be able to build the prototype. So is it the relationship you have with the manufacturer to assure your client that should they build a prototype that works, is that kind of the point of it, is that they'll continue the relationship with that manufacturer to make them? I mean, so you're screening the manufacturers. Do you not understand? So let's say the manufacturer makes the prototype. How are you screening to determine if they have the capacity to, make the orders for them on an ongoing basis?
I don't determine whether they have the capacity. I mean, if they have the capacity to make the prototype, they have the capacity to make more. The question is, of course, how many more? At a certain point, the curves cross over where it becomes more economically feasible to go somewhere else and so on. Our main function is to help people get through that bottleneck of the prototype and the first series of production. Because I don't know if you guys have experience in startups, but generally what happens is you have an idea and you say, okay, great, I have an idea, I think there's a market, now I just need some money, right, to get stuff made. So you go to investors, and the investors, unless they happen to know you and love you personally, or unless they happen to be very passionate about this specific thing, will say the following: that's a great idea, the market looks very nice, we love you very much, you've got beautiful eyes, and then as soon as you get traction, we would love to take a look at putting money into you. So that means that you need to go out there and somehow make the prototype. And this is the brick wall. This is where most companies die. Before it even gets to the question of what's the most economical choice for us to make the full-on volume production run, how do I get the first one made, how do I get the first 10, the first 100 made, that's the wall that most people hit and they never get through it. And that's our focus.
Boris, I feel like when we originally spoke several months ago, one of the things you were talking about is all the idle machine time, right? So folks buy this equipment, the equipment's being used 50, 60% of the time, whatever, so they have capacity. So along those lines, I mean, it's the one small batch and then figuring out how to do the bigger batch. But can you talk about like the excess capacity and why that was maybe one of the motivations of starting Swarmbuild?
Sure. Well, I can talk a bit about the X capacity. I can tell you how I actually had the idea 2 years ago. The X capacity just means, you know, this is a very capital intensive business. You have to buy very powerful machines at that point you go, okay, well, how can I run this thing and make it pay for itself? If you don't have, of course, the volume of orders, then, you know, you run a shift and then you go home. That's it. I'm not sure if that really answers the question of spare capacity.
No, I think the point that I was trying to make is that there's opportunity for these people that buy these very expensive pieces of equipment to take on additional orders. And even if they're small, it's still opportunity for them.
Oh, sure, yeah, absolutely. It's actually a fairly large opportunity. If we can eliminate the transactional cost problem, they would rather work on smaller orders because the guy that wants to make his prototype isn't the big customer like John Deere that'll try to squeeze you for your margin. But yeah, of course, it's very frustrating for a business owner to, you know, walk out of his shop after 8 hours of work and see his machine, which can run lights out and everything else. So you can set an order and it'll carve it out or center it together overnight and see it sitting there idle. It's just like seeing money blowing down the street that you can't capture. And how I came up with the idea was actually, I started off with the idea of 3D printing. The desktop stuff, I needed to make a prototype for a design competition, and it was taking very long on a 3D printer, and I knew perfectly well that within a 5-kilometer radius of where I was sitting in Tel Aviv, that there was more than enough machine capacity going unused for me to get the stuff done affordably overnight. But I didn't have a good channel to reach out to the owners of that machine capacity.
Hi, Boris. Amanda with
Hi, Amanda.
the Accelerator. First, I wanted to say that I just think that this is such a huge and amazing idea. You're really democratizing prototype building, which is just the next thing. And so, in terms of all of the democratization of entrepreneurship and creativity. So, question for you is, could you talk more about the competition you're running into, other people that are doing this, if it's happening, because it's so awesome. And then also a little bit about what it's like for you to be here and be in the Accelerator.
Sure, so let's talk about the competition. So when I said there's a $30 billion market, of course, that's the total available market. But within that, there are many companies actually that are working primarily online. A lot of service bureaus, bidder tends to be in China or Malaysia. The quality suffers, the time suffers, and so on and so forth. There's also Make XYZ, which does something similar, but they focus on 3D printing for the home 3D printing market, the $1,000 machine. And we thought about that. We ended up deciding not to get into that. It's not very interesting for us because there's not a huge cost barrier, right? So if I start ordering in size, I might as well buy my own 3D printer. The next team, Valley, can actually speak to that. They're running one upstairs. But then if I really want to make industrial quality stuff, final products or functional prototypes, then I need something beyond that. The $1,000 3D printer isn't going to hack it that I can learn how to operate in a few hours. I need something that takes a year to learn how to operate and costs $1 million. And that's something that we thought we could deliver more value to both sides of the market, the customer and the machine owners. Does that answer the question a bit? Yeah.
Great. So we got one last question here before we transition. Obviously one of the reasons that we're here is to help you. And so are there any things that you're running into, struggles, problems that you're trying to overcome right now? What can this community help you out with to move your business forward?
Sure. What right now we would like to do is start processing orders. So if this community can connect us with any innovators, makers, small companies, startups that are trying to get stuff prototyped or do low volume production, that would be, I think, the best thing. That's our #1 goal right now.
Awesome. So remember to fill out your feedback sheets. That's super helpful for them. With that, if you guys could help give Boris a hand, great job. Awesome.